Again, my name's Steve Ashby. If you're not familiar who I am, let's go ahead and get started with prayer and to open up. So let's pray. Father God, we just thank you for the beautiful weather. We thank you for last week's resurrection, and we thank you for the ability to live into that resurrection life. Lord, as we have decisions to make in this congregation, just be with us all. Allow the Holy Spirit to move us in the direction that you would want us to move us in. Lord, just allow us to have the knowledge, to have the willpower and come up with the questions and the answers that we all need in order to make that decision that is what you would want us to do as a congregation moving forward. And Lord, just help us and guide us tonight as we meet together and fellowship together and just go over what we have already heard and what we have to learn. And God, we just thank you for who you are and how devoted you are to us. And we just give you all the honor and glory. Amen. So I'm hoping that we can make not necessarily short and sweet, because we want to give this due diligence and give it all the time that it needs. But I have a short presentation of just kind of comparing. If you want to go to Kevin, the next slide there with the agenda. We are going to, I have asked Whitney to come and give us a financial update on just where we are in this whole process. And so she's going to do that, and then we'll go on and have kind of a recap of our two options of being independent or going with the Global Methodist denomination. Then we will hear I've asked Pastor Earl to come up and just tell us his next steps forward. And as a pastor and as an individual, not necessarily to sell us in any direction, but just where he is personally, just so we know where our pastor is. And he has stated that in the past, but I just want to make sure everybody has heard that. And then we'll go through the voting process and what that looks like in the coming weeks as we go through that way. So I will ask Whitney, you're right on time. Just happened to be first on the agenda. So.
Gonna make me speak in this thing and everything.
Of course, you gotta be heard.
This is very formal. I was not expecting it to be this formal. So as far as the process goes, currently we have already went to the bank. Is that better? Okay. So we've already went to the bank. We've gotten our loan process started because with the disaffiliation, we have to pay off the building. And we also have to come up with the lump sum to pay to get out. And so we have that started. The loan amount currently is at $627,058, so $627,058. That was with March's building payoff. So the building payoff in March was $465,780, and then our disaffiliation fee was the $161,278. I do feel like we will need much less than that amount by the time we push forward. Currently, our loan has been approved, but we are on hold until we move forward with the disaffiliation and have all of our paperwork signed. The bank can't move forward with us until we have our new bylaws. So until then, we're kind of on hold. But everything's moving as normal and good, so I don't think that'll be any issue. Oh, okay. So we are planning to do a capital campaign for the church. We are planning to meet this month, so if anybody wants to volunteer to help, I will gladly take your assistance. We're planning to try to meet maybe near the end of the month on a Sunday afternoon while youth is going on, because a couple of those parents are going to be part of it. But we're planning maybe a 3-year capital campaign where we will have people who will pledge to pay a certain amount to help us get this paid off quicker. With the loan process that we will be moving forward with, we will have 5 years with a set rate, and then after that it will be an ARM. So if we could get it paid off before that ARM kicks in and it could go up, that would be phenomenal. So that's kind of our goal, is to do the 3 years. And I think in the past, that's what y'all have done, is a 3-year. The last one that was done was a 3-year capital campaign. So we don't know yet. They haven't told us. Until we lock in, we won't know what our rate will be. But 6 or 7%. Yeah. And I will say, like, currently right now we're making a payment. Our payment currently is $8,699 a month. That's with a 4% rate. But that's our current payment that we make, but currently we are not required to make that large amount. Currently our requirement is $4,568. So we're making a double payment already every single month, and have been for years. So I don't feel like we will be strained, to make this new payment.
Thank you very much. Would you like your pen?
Thank you.
So again, I just wanted to make sure that we knew where we stood on the financial side, so that we could just have a greater understanding along those lines. So now, if we go to the next kind of slides, if you just want to go through, we can look. So, our future right now is we've presented 2 options. We've presented once we are disaffiliated, we are considered independent at that point in time. So once the May 6th comes around and the United Methodist Church votes on us to be disaffiliated, then we will, and then once we pay and get our I'll say liabilities and paperwork completed and turned into the United Methodist Church, at that point we would be considered independent. So we then would be able to maintain our independence if we wanted to do that, or we have the ability to go with the Global Methodist Church, is what we've heard about. So that would be affiliating with a denomination again. And so those are the 2 options that have been presented to us, or that we have presented to the congregation. And so we have heard from the Global Methodist Church. We had a representative come, and the recordings are out there. And we've also heard from Bethel Church, who has disaffiliated and remained independent. And so we had their pastor Jeremy came and discussed that, and that recording is out there, and it has been shared through emails and announcements. So if you have not seen those, please let us know so that we can get that information to you. We have also sent out the document that the Bethel Church, basically their guidelines and bylaws and theology. So we have shared that, and we've also shared the Book of Discipline, or the tentative Book of Discipline for the Global Methodist Church. So if you have not received either of those through email and announcements, please let us know so that we can get that information into your hands. So, yes, sir. You haven't. Do you guys normally get the weekly announcements? You do. Okay. So it's in the weekly announcements. I knew it went out as a special one, but it's also in the weekly announcements. Okay. It is. Okay, you got the special one. So we may need to send that out again. I don't know why that wouldn't have happened, but to me, if you're on the list, it should have gone out, but technology is technology. So, yeah, there's a link. Okay, so the last week's that would have came out on Thursday has that information also. So if you want to look at it again and just make sure. And again, if you didn't for some reason get those, please let the office know so that we can get that information to you. Because again, technology is technology. We can love it and we can hate it, all in the same breath most of the time. So, but All right, so from here, I'm going to go through just a recap of certain topics that have been, just have come up over our time. It's not an extensive recap of both, but it's the topics that seem to be most, that I hear most from the congregation of what they want to hear. So we will see, Kevin, if you want to go to the next one. I have on there just the United Methodist Church. It's also in your handout. It's number 6, slide 6. I have on there as a reference point of we've been United Methodist, so this is what we were doing or how we believed or whatever the case is as a United Methodist. And then I've also included what the Global Methodist Church would have their stance on it, and then also as an independent church, somewhat what our stance would be. Again, if we're independent, if we stay independent, that's up to us. We as a church would then figure those out, where we want to be theologically, how we want to handle our staff. All of those things would be up to us to vote and decide and kind of moving forward and working out for that. So some of the information on here may say up to the church or something along those lines. It's not because I don't want to give that information, it's because we as a church would need to decide what's important for us as a church in moving forward in that area. So, the first one is denominational giving. So, under the United Methodist Church, our apportionments, as they were listed as, were anywhere from 7 to 15% of the local budget. So for us, over the years, not including the health benefits of our pastor, basically was about $35,000 a year. And that's how much, based on what we brought in as a church, how much we paid as an apportionment. With the Global Methodist Church, they deem it a connectional giving, which is 4% of the previous year's income, which again for us would, based on last year's income of around $280,000, $84,000, I've got the paper if we want to know exact numbers, would taking the 4% would be roughly $20,000 versus the $35,000 that we currently pay. And then obviously with being an independent church, we would not have a connectional giving or a apportionment, but we would still have monies that we would give to local missions, to international mission, to projects, to whatever we deemed as a church that we would want to give. So I would say, I don't know this for sure, but I would say we would still be giving potentially that $20,000 to $35,000. It would just be in our hands on who we give it to versus giving it to a conference that then decides where that money is spent. So the pension and the health care actually would not be under those numbers. That would be, and I'm going to address that in a little bit, that would be another area that we would, that we're going to, no matter what, we're going to have to figure out. Well, so if we're, okay. So yes, I typed that in, but that would be, that's probably a typo on my part or an assumption on my part, which is not necessarily correct. So if you want to cross through that, when I was making all of this and putting it together, I was brainstorming and that didn't come back out. So, but we could use that money as part of the pension. Again, it would be up to us as a church to decide what that looked like. But if you want to physically cross out that pension fund, then that probably would be better stated that way. All right, if we go to the next one. So baptism, again, in the United Methodist Church, yes, we have it, and we have infant all the way through adult baptism. The Global Methodist Church also does infant all the way through adult baptism. And again, on the independent side, it would be according to what our church decided. So we could keep it as we've had it in the past, as infant all the way through to adult, or if the church decided that we were only going to do believers' baptism and only baptize those who profess as an adult, then we could move to that, and that could be an option for us. Next one, bishops. So in the United Methodist Church, just for reference, we do have bishops, and they're elected for life, so they never come off. Global Methodist Church, they are elected to a term, and that term is going to be 8 years?
They haven't decided.
Okay, so they haven't completely decided yet, but that would be potentially 8 to 12 year term is what they're looking at right now. So.
Yeah, it's 4 to 8.
Oh, is it 4 days? Okay.
Yeah, 8 would be the max.
Okay, so it hasn't been 100% determined, but we'll say from 4 to 8 years to maybe 12 years. It's they still 4 years.
And a possibility of another 4, and nothing was said about 12.
Okay, so some of yes. So I apologize for that. Yes, sir.
Would you define bishop, and why do we need a bishop?
So bishops are in the United Methodist or in the Methodist denominations they're overseers of the denomination. So from my understanding, because I've always been part of a denomination, whether it's been Presbyterian or Methodist, bishops just are there to make sure that the church is running the way that it should be running, and everybody is doing. So that's one of our concerns with our current status is that but we also, from my understanding, most churches, independent churches, would have a local bishop that they would elect as part of their church. So the term is still there, and again, the idea is the same as far as they oversee the health and vitality of the church. It would be the difference of being local right here, to your point, that they're right here with us, versus somebody who's up there somewhere, and how much they come around. So. All right, next one, church culture. So at this point with the church culture, it is generally moderate, but following the next, as far as the United Methodist Church, will probably go a little more progressive. And so for our case, for the Global Methodist Church, it would be more conservative, and I put down for independent that we would also be more conservative or stay our conservative roots since we are disaffiliating because of some of those theological stances as far as where the United Methodist Church is going. Next one, ordination of clergy. So ordination of clergy, they're conservative to progressive. The United Methodist Church, they are going towards all individuals are allowed to be ordained. Global Methodist is conservative, that men and women are allowed to be ordained. Independent churches, again, I put down conservative because I believe that's where we are as a church, that we would be conservative, that we would like a man or a woman. Some individuals may just want men, and again, if we were independent, we would be able to make that decision. Now, the process, there is a process for both the United Methodist and Global Methodist that you go through as far as having coursework that you have to do, and then sitting in front of, writing papers and sitting in front of committees in order to become ordained. And if we were to go to independent, we would either have to develop that process for ourselves for in-house, where we could do that, or we would, like the Bethel Church, rely on other entities to ordain their clergy and then hire them from that entity. Next one, pastoral assignments. Again, with the United Methodist Church, it's always been appointed by the bishops, and they are appointed annually. So we could have conceivably, we could have a new pastor every year. That doesn't happen very often, but conceivably we could. The Global Methodist Church, it's again appointed as a bishop and SPRC consultation system, and they prefer multi-year. And basically the way they have phrased it is unless or until the pastor would like to be moved, or the congregation would like that pastor to be moved, or a combination of the both, or the pastor is retiring, they will remain at your church. And then with independent church, it's a call system. So again, we would be hiring our own pastor. We would be doing a search committee and then allowing pastors to come in, allowing to preach, allowing, whatever that may be, whatever we determine as a church in order to gain a new pastor or keep a pastor. And again, there's would be no limits based on, or it would be between the pastor and the church on whether they're retained or not. Now we're going to get into the employee benefits. This is where it gets a little bit different, and this is where within the United Methodist Church and how we have it financially, we kind of put the pension and the health care plans within our apportionments. So when if you get a financial statement, our financial statement from the church actually shows last year's that we paid $58,000 some odd dollars in apportionments. Well, that included the health care for the pastor and also the pension for the pastor. And so with the with the United Methodist Church, that is determined by the church, or by the denomination. It's determined by the denomination. The denomination also recommends salaries for your elder, and their retirement is managed by Westpath. With the Global Methodist Church, salaries are determined by the church. They don't, from what I've read and seen, they do not have recommendations. It is determined by the church. Their retirement is also run by Westpath. And as far as medical, that is a little more open-ended. They allow the church to decide how much they're either giving it straight to the pastor or you're putting it into another fund, or things like that in order for them to get their medical coverage. So, but that's more of a church decision along with the pastor in that. And then as an independent, again, we would be able to determine it as the church on the salary. It would also be determining on where the retirement, or how we take care of our pastors in retirement and the funds that we would do. and give for that. And also healthcare would be a little bit up in the air. I don't want to say up in the air, but we would have the ability to determine that as we go through. Yes.
Has anybody done an analysis that if we're buying the healthcare for the pastor versus going through the major church organization, is there any difference in cost?
I don't know that that has been determined or has been figured. We could probably look at that. I don't, Earl, do you know anything on, so, you know, okay. Sorry, I'm going to have this since it's recorded.
So I did look into healthcare options for our church staff. Currently, with apportionments, we are only paying for the pastors, and that is about $14,000 a year out of our apportionments that we pay to the United Methodist. Correct. So if we end up going independent, I think we would have to, if we offer it to one in the church, one staff member, we have to offer it to all staff members. It's required. And if we did that, our cheapest plan would be right around $985 per employee. We would have to pay half of that every month. So $984, 50% of that, which is $400, and yeah, basically $500 per employee that wanted to be on that healthcare plan per month. So that times 12. So it would be a lot more because we'd have to offer it to all staff members.
How many staff members are there?
Publication of the actual numbers and that type of information published, not just,
Yeah.
but published it in a document that we could take a look at.
Is that possible that we could email that? So, okay, so the question was, the original question was healthcare costs. What, has anybody done an analysis on what we currently pay to the United Methodist Church versus what we would end up paying if either we were global or independent? And so currently we pay, well, that's what we heard, the $14,000 a year. And if we were independent, by law, we would have to open that up to all of our employees, which we have 6 or 7 employees. Full-time employees. 30 hours or more. I think that's more like 4 or 5. 4. That would be 4 or 5 employees that we would have to provide or allow them the opportunity to provide that for them. And so then the follow-up with that question was, could those numbers that Whitney gave be published in public so people can look at it? And the answer is yes. We will get that again out through our email and system. Currently it is, which means, so the question is currently the health care plan is for the pastor is through the United Methodist Church. So moving forward, it would not be through the United Methodist Church.
Okay, so if we go to global, it's not going to be through them then?
It will not, correct. So it will not go through, the Global Methodist Church currently doesn't have, do you want to?
So the question on that was about, Global Methodist Church. I don't know the details of it. I just have to be honest about it, but there's options that they're developing. And so I would go, one of the things that we kind of smile about in North Carolina, the annual conference, I think, is 112 days old. And so our VP for the Global Methodist Church said, Earl, we're trying to figure some of these things out. We did not expect to disaffiliate and start the Global Methodist Church, but our hand was forced. And so some of those things are still being developed, and hopefully it'll be in place if we go that way. It will be in place because they have a couple of different options. I didn't dive deep into the questions. I just went, oh, there's something in place, but it's not going to be a self-funded insurance like the Western North Carolina is currently. And when I look at my brothers and sisters in the United Methodist Church as clergy, we're not a healthy bunch. And so we pay, not only does the church pay $14,000 a year, but in addition to that, my portion of that is another $6,000. So we're almost paying $20,000 a year as a self-funded for each clergy in Western North Carolina. So it's outrageously expensive, but it's also self-funded.
Thank you.
Those numbers are to know.
Right.
We're making a selection.
And we will try to get as many of those numbers as we can. So, thank you. Kevin, did you have, or you're just?
I was just going to
You're going to have
have the mic, but just FYI for the staff right now. Me personally, I've worked at this church for 13 years, and I pay my own health benefits, and it costs me $700 a month to work here. So it'd be nice, regardless of which way we go, if we do have something to offer the staff as well.
And I will say, this is kind of an aside to what we're presenting tonight, but when I had a conversation with Kevin about that, and I've had some conversation with other staff since then, and that's where I've asked Whitney, and then I also talked to Scott Negree, since he is the head of the SPRC, and I said, we really need to look into this and being able to provide our staff, no matter which way we go, we should be able to assist them in healthcare. That's just something, and I've talked to other pastors in the area, and they said, yes, you guys not doing that is a problem, and we need to look into that. So I've already kind of started that ball, but I also said, we're spending a lot of money this year, so we're looking into it, and that's where those numbers came from, and I appreciate that Whitney had those numbers, but it may not be a decision made in the near future, within 2023. So, are there any other questions? Since Kevin's got the mic out here, he's doing double duty now. He's trying to run back, so. Check out those new knees that he's got.
That's right.
All right, trust clause. This one's pretty easy. I think we're to the trust clause.
Yes, we have quite
Okay.
a delay.
Gotcha. So trust clause, that's pretty easy. With the United Methodist Church, there is a trust clause. With the other two, there would not be a trust clause. Obviously, with being independent, we are our own church, and we handle things here at the church the way we want to handle it, and all of our property will be ours. With the Global Methodist Church, they do not have a trust clause either, and so once we disaffiliate, all of our property that we've already paid for once over and going to be paying twice over for is ours, and it's ours to keep, and I'll say nobody can take it away, but I'm sure somebody will find a way to take it away down the road. But at this point, the Global Methodist Church has stated they will never put in a trust clause. And obviously with independent, that isn't an option. That's not even something we would be considered. All right, and then joining and disaffiliating. So this basically goes mostly for the Global Methodist Church. But to join the Global Methodist Church, there's an application process that we would go through and provide them the numbers. One of those numbers that they would have to see is a church-wide vote indicating that the congregation as a whole would like to join their church. So it's not the administrative council's decision. It's not the way forward or the committee's decision. It is a church decision. And so we want to provide as much information as possible to our congregation in order to make it an educated decision. And so we've worked towards that. I understand that there may be some deficiencies, and we're getting great feedback on things that we need to add and be able to do. And so hopefully over the next week to 2 weeks, we can get that information, whatever that information that you still need, out, so that you can make an informed decision based on who we are as a congregation and where we want to move forward as a congregation. So Now, also with the Global Methodist Church, the disaffiliation part, so if we decided to go Global Methodist and then we got in and we said, this isn't what we signed up for, it is a 90-day discernment. So basically, our congregation and our church is in prayer for 90 days, along with the Global Methodist Church is in prayer for 90 days. And after that 90 days, we cut ties, if that's what we decide we want to do. So there is not a dollar amount that would go with it because there's no trust clause. But this is obviously there would be paperwork that would go on just to make sure we're cutting ties. But there is no dollar amount or anything like that that goes along with it. I would imagine that, again, we as a church would have a vote on that. And that would be a simple majority of vote that would go along with after or towards the end of our 90 days that this is what we want to do as a congregation. Yes, sir. Okay, he's running.
I hate microphones. Question is, going back to the trust clause, what kind of assurance are we going to have in writing that there'll never be a trust if we choose to go Global Methodist? Because bureaucracies are so guilty of saying one thing and doing another, and I would like assurances that that's not going to happen.
If it is not in their book of discipline, to be added to their discipline would take a majority vote of all churches, of all the denominations.
I know they said they were going to have 40 members or 40 people at the head when they started, and they weren't going to put any more in. Because, things can be loaded. We're dealing with that right now because the bureaucracy has been loaded in one direction.
Correct. And, honestly, I can't tell you 100% that this is going to happen and this is the way. We somewhat have to go off of faith and knowing that most all the churches that are coming out of it don't want to go back into that because they're having to, just what we've done. They've put out a whole lot of money that they've already spent in purchasing and maintaining their buildings. And so to me, the assurance is, and this is me, and where I stand with that, is you've got a whole bunch of churches that are joining and creating a denomination that just came out of that. Why would they want to go back into that? So they would not write that into the book of discipline and add that into the book of discipline. Now, could that change over time? Sure, it could, but then we only have 90 days of discernment, and which probably wouldn't take more than one day of discernment for us to decide we don't want to go back into that. So we have an easy out, or easier out, I would say, with that. But again, that's only if we go that route. If we decide to stay independent, we don't have to worry about any of that anymore. So.
It would seem to me that we'd be better off to try independent first, and then if we don't like what we got, we can always join. But if we join, then we've got to go through the process of back and back out again. So it would seem like that, to me, that would be the best way to go, would be to try going independent, seeing if things don't work out or people don't want to put their shoulder to the job, then you can always go the easy route. Because once you get in, it takes a while to back out.
So that is a viable option. Yes.
When you do something like that, when you decide to go independent to start with, and at some future time to join, you've already incurred substantial costs being independent, and you have to take that in consideration. So you have to look at all the financial factors in both ways. The other portion is if you're with the Global Methodist Church, it has to go through their convention, which we're a part of. And as Steve indicated, churches have gotten away from that. That's why they're leaving the United Methodist Church. They don't want to be putting up with that, their nonsense. So I think it's in the favor of the individual churches to go with the Global Methodist Church.
And we do, just from the beginning. We've got two different sides that we are trying to come together and figure out, and I value both sides. I see the benefits of both sides. I also see the hardships of both sides and how we do that. And again, weighing those options is going to be individual. So Walker, we've had lots of conversations about that. Denver, we've had lots of conversations about that, and I value that, and I understand where you're coming from. And then also to the same point that we've been part of an organization, and so it's, I don't want to say easier to stay as part of an organization. I know, Denver, you that's your term that you like to use. It is easier to stay that way or to go that way, but but there is an easier way out of that organization if we so decide to move that way. So I don't necessarily want to get this into a debate back and forth between the two options tonight. I do value everybody's opinion on each side, but I do want to stick more to questions that we may be able to answer or find the answers. So.
If we were to decide to go independent, do we have someone qualified to lead this process, and do we have enough members that are going to be dedicated, that they're going to fill the other positions available?
I believe so. We have not done any formal, I'll say, polling to figure out how to pull that together and who would be knowledgeable in that. We have a lot of bright people in this congregation that we could figure that out. I'm confident of that. My side of things, and again, this is Steve Ashby, as the committee chair for this, if the vote goes independent, my recommendation would be the administrative council is that group, because they're already elected to positions of leadership in this church, and then they would decide how things are going to go. So the pastor parish or the staff parish committee, they would write the document that they would need to write in order to make sure that we are compliant with our staff. The trustees would come together and we would write the documents that we needed to write, or review the documents, because there's lots of examples that are out there that we can go off of. But then they would take that. And so each committee would then be tasked to bring it to the administrative council. The administrative council would put it together. And then again, to me, it would go towards the church vote that yes, this is what we would want to do and how we would want to be as far as a church would go. So does that answer kind of, sort of? Yeah, and I don't know that, so the question is Bethel's mentioned that they had a lawyer that was on their team. I don't know everybody's, yeah, and so I don't know that we as a church have any lawyers in our congregation. We may, I don't know everybody's profession. We do have on retainer a lawyer, law firm that we could consult with, but so we would be able to legally make sure everything is taken care of, and we would have to make sure that was the case. All right. So next, I'm going to ask Earl to come forward and just give his future as far as being minister.
Thank you. I feel like I need to introduce myself, huh? I'm Earl. No. But just a little backstory so that you understand where I'm coming from. I was a kid that grew up going to church, went to church primarily because that's where the girls were. And so I went to church and youth group, and every once in a while on Sunday evening, one of us boys sitting on the back row would have to get saved so we could go home. Someone, and you guys, if you've ever been in that kind of setting, you understand. So I got saved multiple times, but it never really stuck, okay? So I married a good United Methodist girl that we negotiated before we got married that I was going to go to church with her. She was like, "You are going to church with me." And I went, "Okay." And so I'm glad I did. Some of our worst fights as a young couple, that I was being very difficult going to church. But one Saturday night at a lay witness weekend, I gave my life to Christ, and it stuck. And so we became very involved in the life of the church, Weddington United Methodist. A couple of years later, God started tugging on my heart about going in the ministry. I was called in the ministry, felt like I was called into the United Methodist Church, and started my first appointment in 1994 in the great metropolis of Morven, and with the suburbs of McFarland, Cason's Oldfield, and Cairo, the great metropolis of Cairo. And if you can find Cairo on a map, you're pretty good, okay? And served there for 7 years, and then served 16 years at Mill Grove, 2 years at Central, and been here since 2019. And I always said this, Methodist theology I agree with. I'm there. I am absolutely there. As a Wesleyan, Arminian, I believe in those issues that we talk about. I believe in the Methodist core. But I always said I would not leave the United Methodist Church until I felt like God called me out or the church was going apostate. And so that's where I'm at now. And so I had to send with us disaffiliating, and I'm also disaffiliating from the United Methodist Church, surrendering my credentials. It was a rough email to write to Kim Ingram, who's the secretary of the Western North Carolina Conference, to say that I'm surrendering my credentials under paragraph 361.1. And so I did that with the understanding that I was going to move my credentials, transfer them to the Global Methodist Church. But I had to write that email before I got confirmation from the Global Methodist Church. That's kind of like feeling like you're quitting a job before you have an offer. And so tomorrow will be 2 weeks from where I got the email from the Global Methodist Church that I have been accepted as a clergy, elder in the Global Methodist Church. And so that's where I'm headed. I've read the discipline. It's only 124 pages. I had to check the box to say that I read the discipline and I agree with it, and I do. And so for me, that's been my background as a Methodist. That's where I belong. That's my theology. That's who I am. So my hope is I will continue to be the pastor here. No matter what the church votes in the early phases, I can serve as a Global Methodist clergy with an unaffiliated church for a period of time. It hasn't been determined how long, but if the church does not affiliate with Global Methodist Church, eventually I'll need to move on. I don't know if it's months, if it's years. I just have no idea about that, but I feel strongly about it. Some of the questions that come up, and I think it's probably because of my relationship with the folks who are in the leadership, both at a state level and then also at the national level that I know personally, I go, these are people I want to go to battle with. These are people that I believe in, that I trust. They're not perfect, none of us are, but I go, these are folks that I've been doing battle with in the United Methodist Church in our traditional Orthodox theology. And so I went, yes, these are the folks I want to be part of. One of the beautiful things for us is that Kim wants to go towards the coast. And so the Global Methodist Church, eventually. So the Global Methodist Church has one annual conference for all of North Carolina. Currently in the United Methodist Church, you have Western North Carolina and the North Carolina Conference. And about as far as you can go, it would be Greensboro, and just kind of come that way is Western North Carolina West. Then you have, of course, to the right. So Kim loves the idea that maybe I could be a retired pastor somewhere at the beach after many years of serving other places. So I'm kind of excited about that, because I used to say when she said she wanted to retire at the beach, that I was going to miss her. I was going to miss her. So that's where I'm at. Obviously, as the pastor, I mean, I need to be honest and go, I care about this church. I love this church. I love the individuals in it, and I want the very best. And so I think short-term, long-term, I know the direction that I want to go in. I hope this church goes in. But you guys have to really settle it in your own hearts, what you want to do and what is right for this congregation at this time and moving forward. One of the things about it, obviously as a pastor, I have some influence, but I don't even get a vote in this whole thing. So I'm just going, I'm going to trust the Lord on this. And through that whole process of submitting my surrender of credentials and that email and waiting there's a piece that really I just went, God, you're still on the throne, and you have this. And guess what? No matter which way we go as a church, if we stay independent, if we go Global Methodist Church, guess what? God's still on the throne. He still loves us, and it's the blood of Jesus Christ that covers us and gives us the hope of everlasting life in Christ. And so for me, I want to be the pastor of this church. I love being the pastor of this church. But I also know that at some point I won't be. And so I hope that this congregation makes a wise decision on how best to fill that the next time and the next time and the next time. So, Steve, come get the mic from me or I'll keep talking.
We'll have another sermon. All right. Thank you, Earl, for that. And again, as he said, I wanted him to be able to verbally state, which I know he has in the past, but to everybody so that they know where he is going and what he is doing. Not that we have to follow as a congregation, but that is his direction. And then, as he stated, we need to make our own direction as we move forward. So, all right, if we go to our voting process, so just so you know what to expect, Earl and I had this revelation earlier today that I had totally missed a week in April. Like all of next week was out. And so I was putting dates down and I was like, wait a minute. If we start voting on what's tomorrow? The 17th, that's 2 weeks until the 30th. What am I doing? And so I had to step back and say, I got to get my mind right on this. So we have decided that with this vote, we will open it up to a week-long process. So you will have the ability to come to the church office starting not this coming week, but the following week, the 24th. And so the 24th through the 27th, you will be able to come to the church office, and Sabrina will be able to help you, check your membership, because you must be a member, and then also she will hand you a ballot, and you will then cast your vote in a locked box. And I'm working on the locked box, trying to figure out where we have one or where I can get one. So we will have that process. So she will be there during business hours, which is 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., Monday through Thursday. At any point during those hours, you can come and cast your vote during that time. We will also have a Wednesday evening opening. So from 6 to 8 on Wednesday evening. Thursday. I just typed it wrong. So which do we want to do that? We did say Wednesday, but we haven't made arrangements yet. So it's on the posters. Okay, so it's on the posters. So please correct that on your handout. Sorry, I messed up on that. So that should say Wednesday, April 26th. April 26th, Wednesday, April 26th. Again, I apologize for that. We will be open from 6 to 8, where you can come and vote at that point in time, if that works better with your schedule. We will also, on Sunday, it'll be down in the fellowship hall. I've also had the question come up, you reminded me of this, if we need to do drive-in voting, if there's somebody who has a hard time getting out of their vehicles, we can do that also. So we can make arrangements for that. We would just obviously need to somehow know. So if you're driving yourself and you have a hard time getting out of your car and coming in, I guess call the office and let them know that you're outside. If you're with somebody else, then have them come in. We can get the ballots. We can walk out and cast the vote that way. So we can do it that way. And then our final date we will have is on Sunday the 30th. We will be able to vote throughout the church time that we're open. The church usually opens around 8:15 in the morning. So we will have in the fellowship hall, we will have a station where you can come and cast your vote from that point on until about 12:30. I say about 12:30 because if Earl gets long-winded and we go until 12:15, I don't want to just give us 15 minutes. I would like to have at least a half an hour once the service is done in order for people to come in and cast their votes if they so desire to do that. So that will be the times. Again, we've made it a week-long process for you to come. Now, as I've stated, all ballots will stay on premises. So we're not coming and grabbing a ballot, taking it home, thinking about it, and then bringing it back. Please come ready to cast your vote when you come to the church. A sample ballot is what we have down there in the box on there. So a sample would be, I would like to join or I would like to be part of the Global Methodist denomination or an independent church. So you would mark which one you would like to join, which one you would like to cast your vote for, and then you would cast your vote right there. So our results, so after the voting is done at, we'll say 12:30-ish, we will have a committee that will count the votes. If you would like to stick around and be there for the results, you can stick around and be there for results. Otherwise, we will put that out with a phone call. I believe it's called a calling post is the program we use. So we'll do a calling post. We will also do an email. But then obviously we will provide the results in the May 6th service. I think it's May 6th, the Sunday, 7th? May 7th at the service. We would provide the results there also. So any questions about voting? Yes, Harry?
What's the percentage?
So one question that we had, Harry's question was percentage, and so I'm going to give a little more information to that. So one way we had, if we as a congregation decide to go Global Methodist, as I stated before, the Global Methodist Church requires us to have a church vote in order to join their denomination. It is a simple majority vote, so 51%. So simple majority, we would have 51% of our congregation say that we want to join the Global Methodist Church. We looked and Earl called the denomination and talked to him about, okay, how does that vote need to be handled? Does it need to be like we did before with the United Methodist Church, the UMC? When the district superintendent came, they had the very formal way of doing that. The Global Methodist Church said it was up to the church, how the church wanted to vote, as long as we can provide them with our method and our results, so that we can say that it is a valid vote. So that's where we have come up with a little bit easier time of not having everybody at one place at one time and counting the votes in front of everybody, and being able to accommodate more members to be able to be part of the program and be part of the vote as we go through. So, thank you.
I doubt that I need that. Yeah. Just want to clarify, 51% of all members or 51% of the cast ballots?
Voting members. 51% of voting members, thank you. Of cast. Of ballots cast. Which is the same in my mind, but it's not. Okay.
51% of voting members is everybody eligible, whether they showed up or not.
Okay.
Cast ballots.
So cast ballots. So it's 51% of the people that show up and put a ballot in the box. These layman terms, I gotta. When you say cast, I think a caste system, and that's like a whole different. So any other questions as far as?
I don't have a question about voting, but I do have a question.
Okay.
Has any consideration been taken into account the event that the Methodist Conference does not vote to let us disaffiliate?
No. I have not. Yes, it is. It is always a possibility that on May 6th, that the UMC may decide that we are not allowed to disaffiliate for whatever reason that is. I would say, just off the top of my head, and this is Steve Ashby talking, I would say we would get a reason why. Hopefully they provide a reason why, and then we would be able to rebut it, would be able to go through a similar process, however that is. I don't know if they have, Earl, do you know if they've have a system for that? They haven't really.
In all honesty, we can't. I mean, my mentality on this, and I have stayed awake at night concerned about that, Don. I just have to be honest with you. I don't trust, that's part of the reason we're disaffiliating. I don't trust the current leadership in the United Methodist Church and our Western North Carolina Conference. I don't trust some of my clergy that I'm in covenant with because they continue to break it. So that's a concern of mine. I don't think, there doesn't seem to be a tidal wave of the liberal progressives wanting to keep us, force us, but I think we would just have complete chaos if that doesn't happen. So I'm one of those, I can't plan for something that may or may not happen in that, but I could certainly see that it would be chaos. I would see apportionments just drop to zero for the United Methodist Church. And of course, I would just see a plethora of lawsuits coming up that would attract it. So, I mean, I hope we're going to have civility, but I still have butterflies on my belly when we talk about that.
The Georgia district superintendent over 700 churches stopped all disaffiliation. There was no meetings whatsoever. She stopped it and says, you're not going because there's been misinformation and disinformation. So I don't trust any bureaucratic offices.
Yeah, and at this point, again, could it happen? Yes. Do I think they've got a big headache on their hands? I think they would have a large headache on their hands if that was the case. And maybe they take that on, but I don't know. So
I had read about 2 months ago that only 6% of the Methodist churches are disaffiliating. 94% are staying.
That they know about. Yeah.
Like in ours, we're right at 1,000, and I'll let you, 1,000 churches. We have 214 in this cycle wanting to disaffiliate.
So what Earl was saying is there's, in the Western North Carolina Conference, there is 1,000 United Methodist churches, and 214 are wanting to disaffiliate on May 6th. That doesn't include any others that may come after May 6th.
North Carolina is second. Texas is first. 57% of the churches disaffiliating are from Texas. I don't know what the percentage is for North Carolina, but they're the next.
Yeah. And I know North Carolina Conference, which is down at the beach, the eastern side, they have been more forgiving in disaffiliation, and so they had 249 churches disaffiliate. And do we know how many total?
They were right at
800. So they had a total of 800 on the east side of North Carolina, and 249 of those have disaffiliated. So,
is there not going to be another conference in September for more churches that are going to disaffiliate?
is there a September?
It had,
Okay.
Bishop
So
Carter said he would have a special call in, but the date hadn't been set. So I hope I don't have to worry about the next conference.
yeah. So according to Bishop Carter, he has stated that he will have special called annual conferences as the need arises, whatever that may be. And so they're tentatively it may be for September.
But
I
it is
don't know
better
if
to
so.
get out now because there'll be less people to vote in your favor come September.
Yes. Yes. So, and we have started that, and again, should be completed with all of that by September. So, God willing, we will be on our own, or, well, we'll be on our own, however that looks. So, Chef.
Yeah, you've indicated that the disaffiliation would be official after, number one, the May 6th vote, and then number two, the completion of the financial obligations. And any idea of the timeline of that?
So as far as I know, as far as paperwork goes, all of it's been completed that we can complete at this point in time, which what we haven't been able to complete would be more of the financial side, because we are waiting for the May 6th in order to be able to complete that paperwork. Is that? That's correct. That's correct all the way around. And 30 days, once we complete that paperwork, the loan will be available in 30 days, correct? Okay. Does that answer your? Now, we will have, according to the conference, we have until December 31st of 2023. Hopefully it doesn't take that long for us to get our act together, but we would have that amount of time in order to complete the process, as far as the United Methodist Church is determined. Any other questions? All right, Kevin, can we go to the last? So, thank you for coming out. My email is up there. I believe in conversation, it may have been published incorrectly on some information. So that is the correct email. If you have any questions at all, obviously you can send them to Earl. I'm going to put him on the spot. And he will forward them to me, but you can also email me. And we will try to, again, we've got this coming week to try to answer as many questions, and we've got some financial ones that we're going to get out right away. But if you have any questions that come up once we're gone, feel free to contact me, and I will work on getting the answer. And that answer will go out to everybody. I've tried the emails that I've gotten to answer those questions to you, but then also provide them to the congregation, and that was some of the information that I presented tonight. So, but please feel free to let us know. I will say on a personal note, this has been quite trying on me, and I am towards the end of my wits on this information and moving forward on all of this. So, if I didn't have the energy and all the right answers tonight, I apologize, but I'm kind of done. And hopefully we can find, whatever we move forward with, we can find some others who maybe have more energy for it, because my energy is about spent. So, any final questions that we can maybe answer before we end?